don't own your stocks, and I'll show you exactly who does. We're breaking down the Clarity Act, the largest surveillance bill in American history, and mapping the exit they don't want you to find. Pre-show starts now. Aaron Day here. Coming up next, a music video that hits different. I See Them in the Dark. Turn it up.
There's a man in a cage, and the cameras left the room. Patel gave a speech, said the war was over soon. But the cages stayed locked when the speeches were done. And I see them in the dark, every single one. You said the war was over, you said you pardoned Ross. You said the rest were coming. The 7 are still inside tonight, sitting in the dark, in the dark, in the dark. Pardon them all, pardon them all. Code is free speech, walk them home. End the war or lose Congress. Ian and King, 8 years digital cash. Roger 50 million in a gag, the bill is not paid. Sterling off 12.5 on a black box stand. Roman storm 40 years, retrial near at hand. On Christmas Eve, Morgantown in the snow. William 67, Lisbon 4 years to go. Race goes in his name, deported through the door. Money transmitter laws, bank secrecy act and more. The house about to flip in the war or lose Congress. You pardon Ross, the 7 are the 10s. I see them in the dark, in the dark, in the dark. Pardon them all, pardon them all. Code is free speech, walk them home. In the war or lose Congress. America won't lead the world in crypto if it cages its innovators. The code outlives the warden. We see them in the dark. I see them in the dark, in the dark, in the dark. Pardon them all, pardon them all. Code is free speech, walk them home. In the war or lose Congress. The code outlives the warden. Free, yeah, free Robin, free Robin, free Storm, free Keon, free William, free Ray. I see them in the dark. The code outlives the warden.
Next up, the hijacking. Watch closely, you'll want to see this one.
That 1-1 Senate seat going once. 50-50 in the room, 1 point in the state. Bids on the floor. Left, right, and every road we hear you.
Going once, not for sale. Going twice, not for sale. One seat, whole country, not for sale. Left, right, every road, not for sale.
40 on the table out of Vegas in the spring. Adelson wrote the check, the leadership funds the ring. 17 for some no biggest bet in a decade. Republican Jewish coalition where the introductions are made. Back in the wings, the pro-Israel Pax machine. 15 and a half already carved Massey off the scene. 55 to 45, most expensive house ever run. Kentucky was the warning shot, New Hampshire's lot one. Where the floor, we hold the margin, we already know the price. We counted every zero and we already told you twice.
Stop surveillance, so retribution for Massey. Stop the ADOS and take over. No foreign money on our seats.
Latu Zano 08. Tarpius handed the oversight. See why the country's in a mess. 7 months on the panel, then he walked away clean. Boston Scientific Board while he's still on the team. Time Warner Cable elected him the very same year. Watchdog on the hand and the hand paid the steer. Under $1 million walking in, 36 walking out, acting up influence without a filing to shout his own bio. Brags a global finance chair. We read every line, we know exactly what's there.
Not so, not so. Yes, then voted to extend the bond. National ID wave through inside a war bill. Records taken in secret and a gag to keep you still. One database of everyone, no warrant on the door. They can ask your bank, your doctor, and you'll never even know. Not for sale. Not for sale.
2016, one man on the ballot line. Aaron Day drew 17,742 that time. I lost the seat by 2017. That's the margin, that's the lever, that's the math, the room is seen. The check clears in Vegas, the podium's in Manchester, but the floor holds the key and the floor is the register. This is not incompetence. This is conquest.
Stop surveillance, so retribution for Massey. Stop the ADOS and take over. No foreign money on our seats. Stop surveillance, so retribution for Massey. Stop the ADOS and take over. No foreign money on our seats. I don't dare. I don't dare. I don't dare.
The state just convicted a man for writing open source code. Roman Storm built Tornado Cash, and for that, they came for him. This one goes out to every developer who still believes math is speech.
$500 in a pocket off the plane. Rush it to the coast, odd jobs, learn the name of every gate. Built a company, out at nights he didn't sleep. Wrote the function, pushed the commit, let the network keep. Consulted counsel, sat with lawyers on the west coast floor. They said clean, they said green, they said walk through the door. The arpeggio is running while I say his name out loud. Roman wrote it once, and it is running for the crowd. Same signal, same one from the top. Sanctioned and delisted in the function did not stop. Vegas said free speech, Manhattan said the cage. We are on the floor and we are turning up the page. Writing code is not a crime. Writing code is not a crime. The author in the courtroom, the function on the line, free roaming storm, the loop keeps running fine. Writing code is not a crime. 6 in the morning, kids' bikes on the drive, a 3-year-old away because the rifles had arrived. Auburn kitchen cereal bowl, sunrise on the seal, a father with his hands up and a daughter learning real. Wood panel room in Manhattan, empty chair, close screen, 2 million on the bond and 40 years between. Theory matched him, paradigm pulled a chair, 6.39 million says the coalition's there. Cash Patel on a Vegas stage said the code is free, same government, same season, same 40-year plea. Van Loon struck the sanctioned treasury, walked it back, they kept the man on the docket while the protocol runs black. October 26, 2026, Southern District Failures Room 1, count on the sticks. Jury hung on 2 and the government said again the operator address is 0 and the pool does not end. He never held your funds, he could not hold them if he tried. Bernstein said the code is speech, and speech has not died. The prosecution is theater. The code is permanent. Writing code is not a crime. Writing code is not a crime. The author in the courtroom, the function on the line, free roaming storm, the loop keeps running fine. Writing code is not a crime. Writing code. Writing code is not a crime. Mathematics doesn't negotiate, the nodes don't ask permission. Free or in a cell, the function still executes. The math outlives the docket. The math outlives the docket.
One more before we go live. This one is called Trap in Disguise, a reminder that the prettiest cages are the ones you never see coming. Turn it up.
I woke up to silence, but the war had begun. They froze my account, said I'd done something wrong. Wasn't no crime, just living free. Now the system got a chain on me.
They took my savings, my future, my land, with a single code line and a government hand. Said it was safety, said was green, but all I see is tyranny behind the screen. This ain't innovation, it's a trap in disguise. You'll own nothing, be watched all your life. Genius ain't freedom, reality ain't clear. It's a cage they built while we cheer. I believed in the promise, the man with a plan, but the same old swamp just changed its brand. He banned the front door, opened the back, signed the bills that launched the final attack. This ain't innovation, it's a trap in disguise. You'll own nothing, be watched all your life. Genius ain't freedom, reality ain't clear. It's a cage they built while we cheer. Your gold, your guns, your voice, your name, they'll digitize it all, then shift the blame. Palantirizing AI chains, freedom dying slow in patriotic flames. This ain't about safety, it's control in disguise. With your ID, your face, your tears, your time, they wrapped it in stars, sold it with pride. But freedom's bleeding out from the inside. DEFCON 1, and they call it peace, but I still got breath. I still believe we can break the code, escape the scheme, turn this nightmare back into a dream.
It's beginning. The Aaron Day Show starts now, live. All right, welcome back to the Aaron Day Show. This is season 3, episode 22, and we actually have a ton of information to go through tonight. And actually, this is a topic that I have discussed on this show for months, which is the Clarity Act. And I mean, I've done a couple of dedicated podcasts to it, but I've written articles and, talked about it at length. And for some reason, people still believe that this is a pro-crypto, pro-free market bill. And so just yesterday, they released another, like a 600-page version. And as I explained on numerous occasions, the longer it takes to get a bill across the finish line, the worse the bill becomes. Because in essence, you have to get more and more buy-in, either from special interests or from the political parties themselves who always want to consolidate political power. This is always the case. And you can look at I mean, the history of any bill going through Congress, but particularly anything in the realm of financial regulation, it always gets worse. And so they've been talking about getting this Clarity Act over the finish line. You know, they were going to have it done by July the 4th. This was the big push. And you've seen Trump and Treasury Secretary Bezant out there talking about how important this bill is. And they didn't get it done on July the 4th. And then, you know, now they're running up against a deadline where if they don't get it done, you know, by some point in August, it's probably dead. So the prediction markets have it at less than 50% right now. But we haven't known what the new provisions of the bill are that have been proposed. We haven't known what the negotiations behind the scenes have been until yesterday when we got a glimpse when they dropped the new documents. And as expected, the one thing you could tell is that over the last couple of weeks, law enforcement agencies have come out and started to endorse the bill. You've seen Democrats like Mark Warner from Virginia come out and talk about the importance of the bill. Well, that's a bad sign. That's a bad sign if you are, you know, a listener to this show. You know that we're concerned with human freedom and privacy and sovereignty. And I have made this statement several times, and I seem to be the only one saying this, but if you actually read the bill, I believe that it's completely justified. This is the largest surveillance bill in U.S. history, and it's getting even worse. So I'm going to actually walk through some of the stuff that I've already talked about before, some of the things that we have known were in the bill. And remember, the Clarity Act, this started out as a bill passed about a year ago in the House, and then there were two different competing versions in the Senate, and so now there's a new draft. And so, you know, they have to basically agree in the Senate, and then they have to actually work across the aisle. There's a lot of work to do to get this done, but there have been all these different versions floating around, and as is usually the case, by the time you actually get the thing across the finish line, you get the worst elements of all of the bills. And I say this from the perspective of if you're actually interested in freedom and privacy. And as I've discussed, and you can go to day2026.com, my US Senate page, and I have had I'll go through that as part of this as well, a section where I rate these bills, all of them, whether you're going all the way back to the Patriot Act, to the Genius Act and everything else. And I give you all of the detailed information about it, the summary, who voted for it, where it actually, you know, hits on a variety of different freedom dimensions, who the lobbyists are, how much money has been spent. I give all of that detail. And so the algorithm that I have for rating these bills, I applied to this new bill, and it is the worst of them all. It scores an 83 out of 100 in terms of kind of a technocracy score. This bill is not only how we will own nothing. It is not only the largest surveillance bill in U.S. history, it is how we will own nothing. This bill is about how everything that you own will be tokenized and put under the control of governments and other third parties. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is literally the construction of the bill. And I want to start with, I think, the most important thing to understand about the Clarity Act, because people think that the Clarity Act is about crypto. And crypto is a very small part of what the Clarity Act is about. So, for instance, if you think you own your stocks, you don't. And the Clarity Act is going to actually be the mechanism by which you're dispossessed of all of your assets, not just a control system for how you pay for things. The reason this is important is if you're listening to this and you say, well, I don't care about crypto at all, or I'm just in gold and silver. Yeah, I knew crypto was a scam. Understand that, you know, as it stands today, you don't have self-custody of your investment portfolio, of your retirement portfolio, your 401ks, the stocks that you hold in publicly traded companies. You don't actually have that in your own possession. You use a broker. And I'll explain the mechanics of how that works. But, you know, right now, the name on your stock certificate that you think you own isn't yours. All of these public stock certificates are owned by one company, a company called Cede & Co., whose CEO happens to be ex-CIA. We actually literally have a structure where there is a middleman in the middle of holding all of the certificates for all publicly traded stocks. And then you go through a broker to kind of get a reference, an IOU on these things that Cede and Company owns. And this is confirmed on investor.gov by the SEC itself. So again, you don't have to take my word for it. You can look up all of this stuff. You can look up Cede and Company. You can look up, do I have custody of my own assets? What is that relationship like with the broker from an ownership perspective? And so, I've talked a lot about the importance of tokenization. And the reason for this is, cryptocurrency is really going after 5% of global assets. In fact, the slide should actually say money represents 5% of global assets. And you can think about this yourself. How much of your own wealth are you holding in your bank account? Probably not a lot, right? A lot of your net worth is probably in your house, or it's in investments, or at this point, the way things are going, maybe you don't have any assets at all based on the devaluation of the currency. But in any event, people focus so much about money and digital currency without really taking the broader picture, which is that these other assets, your house, your car, your retirement accounts, commodities, that makes up the other 95%. So this is a much, much larger market size here. So when people talk about the dollar or the yuan or whatever it happens to be, this, we're talking about whatever, $3 trillion for the Chinese digital yuan. These are small potential market sizes. But when you're starting to talk about the tokenization of assets, you're looking at $600 trillion plus. And that's before you start talking about derivatives. And then once you get into derivatives, you're actually talking about, quadrillion. Literally. So this is 200 times, the size. The market size for tokenized assets is 200 times the size of the supply of money itself. This is why the Clarity Act is so important. The Clarity Act is not about cryptocurrency or about this little niche asset class that people think is going to, go to the moon. This is about taking your real world assets and basically tokenizing them, computerizing them, turning them into a computer file that you don't actually control. So so now all of a sudden, people understand the idea of what a CBDC is. A CBDC is a form of digital programmable money that the central bank or the central bank in conjunction with the government can program. They can decide where you can spend it, how much of it you can spend. They can take it away from you if you don't follow the rules. They can completely, censor your speech, and they can track all of it. Everybody kind of is getting a better idea of what CBDCs are. Well, now apply that same surveillance and that same control to everything that you own. People like to talk about the Canadian truckers, the Canadian truckers being a perfect example of financial censorship and having their bank accounts shut off. But now imagine that happens. You speak out of line. You don't say what the government wants you to, wants to hear. You deviate from the authoritarian norms, and now all of a sudden your investment account is frozen. Your ability to sell your house is frozen. Perhaps even your ability to use your car. You can actually shut off increasingly the ability to even use your assets, let alone sell your assets. This is what the Clarity Act is actually about. So I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that it's the biggest surveillance bill, because it literally encompasses everything that you own. This is Klaus Schwab's absolute dream, what's going on with the Clarity Act. And now one of the things that you might have seen, you'll see Larry Fink from BlackRock, and you'll see people coming out from Fidelity and other places, and they're all excited about the Clarity Act, and they're all talking about the tokenization of assets. Howard Lutnick's firm, Cantor Fitzgerald, they have been working on behind the scenes, getting all of these platforms ready for the Clarity Act to be dropped in. Now, the thing that I want to say about crypto and the tokenization of assets is, if you remember, at least what we thought the point of Bitcoin was from the beginning, was to be peer-to-peer digital cash that you could use without third parties. What you will note when you see people supporting the Genius Act and now the Clarity Act, you'll see this laundry list of people coming out celebrating the bill. These technologies were meant to get rid of these middlemen. These are the middlemen that the technology is supposed to displace. So what's happening is we're keeping the middlemen. We're keeping the high costs and the high surveillance of the existing system. But now we're adding more programmability, and we're adding, much more granular control over what can be done with everything that you own. So now, so you really at this point won't own anything. If your mortgage and everything, you could argue you don't own these things already, but you could argue that your stocks and all these other things, they're being built to be frozen and clawed back, or basically if you're not on a whitelist, you can't even engage in commerce whatsoever. So all of these things actually fit together. The tokenization of assets, digital ID, which in the US is now in the form of real ID. All of this is meant to gatekeep who can engage in, I don't even know if you call it voluntary trade at this point or not, given the barriers that are put in place. But this is the complete digital control system. And this Clarity Act is actually the biggest component of it. It's far worse than what people were worried about when you were talking about CBDCs. So the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm not going to go over all of the details from the previous analysis. You can watch the previous podcast, or as I said, I'll pull up day2026.com. We can go through the build page. But I'm going to talk about the highlights, the 616-page crypto draft that was circulated just yesterday. And by the way, the thing that you're going to hear about this if you're watching this on social media is that people are talking about, hey, they just put in ethics, reform, ethics regulation in this bill that will prevent politicians from launching meme coins and all this other stuff. They're actually trying to position this as reining in government corruption and this being about an ethics win. This is the highlight. And by the way, as we talk about this, you'll see exactly how cynical this process is. But by the way, the only reason people are even not rioting in the streets about this is they've already bought the propaganda. They bought the Clarity Act is about, clear rules for the road. America is going to lead in innovation because of the Clarity Act. And I'm telling you, entrepreneurs are not sitting around waiting for 100-page bills that add surveillance and add all kinds of constraints on their ability to engage in trade. This is not what people are waiting for at all. And now it's like yesterday, Russia announced that they were implementing crypto regulation. So then all of a sudden, well, if Russia did it, we have to do it. As if what makes a country competitive is the extensiveness of their rules and surveillance. It is a complete inversion of how free markets work. It's also a complete inversion of the United States itself and the founding principles. So I was stunned. I'm still going through in more detail and like cross-referencing and kind of trying to project out what all of this means. But I'm going to hit some of the high points today because it's critically important at this point that people know. And when you see traffic online, I mean, I've been on podcasts. I went on the Sal and Mark Ed show last night, and they had me on, and obviously they get it. But they were even saying that a lot of the people they've had on the show, which this is an agorist centered audience. He said a lot of the other people they've had on the show have been pro the Clarity Act, and it's mind-boggling to me because I will say no one's wanted to debate me on this topic, and I comment on it quite frequently, and I'll put things out that no one's refuted the idea that it's the largest surveillance bill, and yet still people are saying that this is going to be somehow this great windfall for freedom and crypto in America, and it's just that's at odds with the reading of the bill in any way, shape, or form. So the House has passed the Clarity Act. The Senate has not finished this yet. And as I said at the beginning, right now there are 50 Republicans support it. It has to get 60 votes. Rand Paul is against it, and I believe Josh Hawley is against it. Those are the only two Republicans to come out against it. But it has to get to 60. So if you'll recall, one of the things that I've been saying about the bill in its previous versions is that basically they will track all of your transactions. One at the heart of this is your transactions and your transaction history, the construction of your trades. So in other words, what you're buying and selling over time. They're mapping out basically all of that over time, storing that information for 5 years, sharing that information with multiple departments of the U.S. federal government, and also sharing that information with foreign central banks. This has been a part of it from the very beginning. Now, on top of that, so that was the bad, at the heart of it, one of the major issues with this. But to get from here to 60 votes, they're trying to entice law enforcement agencies that have come out in support of it, and Democrats. And overall, if you look at what they're saying, is a Democrat will say they want more consumer protection, and more consumer protection means more government control. Consumer protection from the government is never about protecting the consumer. It's about empowering the government, and that's always the case. So when you ever hear Elizabeth Warren talk about protecting the consumer, you better grab your wallet. So that's the instance there. But in getting law enforcement out, there are a lot of people in the crypto community that have been completely duped. And I will explain how by the language. They've put in language that makes it sound like it's great for open source developers, that it's great for DeFi. And when you read the actual languages, it's a complete rug pull, not only in what it states explicitly, but also what it invites. So in a lot of cases, part of the bill is they've punted the hard stuff. And I'll explain what that is also. So this bill only goes from bad to worse. And actually the one safeguard that they did promise got pulled out of this bill. They actually promised that the United States would not issue a CBDC. That was part of this bill originally. It was a CBDC ban. That got stripped off, and then I think it got put into some other piece of legislation. And now where they came out on it is, there's not going to be a CBDC until 2030. Well, I mean, I've got news for you. As I've reported on numerous occasions, they've already built the CBDC. This is Epstein funded through MIT Multimedia Lab. It's Project Hamilton, Project Cede, Regulated Liability Network. So there are people out there saying, this is great. Nothing can happen until 2030. If the technology's off the shelf, remember, guys, 2030 is when they wanted to go live with this stuff anyway. It is a complete propaganda operation to convince people that the CBDC issue is dead. Because there are a lot of people out there that think, we never even started to work on this. Go to the MIT Digital Currency Initiative. These things that I've said, I wrote about it in my book, The Final Countdown, but this isn't even like secret information. When I wrote this book, I found this information on their websites. They don't even hide this stuff. Project Hamilton, which is the replacement for the digital dollar, has 2 Bitcoin core developers that have worked on it. One of them, Corey Fields, he's on the white paper. He's a co-author of the white paper of Project Hamilton, funded by Epstein's group. Like, you can't make this stuff up. But even that was deleted from this bill. So they nixed that. Now, the Genius Act is already law. And, I mentioned this several times. The Genius Act is effectively now, in conjunction with the Clarity Act, a backdoor CBDC. So what do I mean when I say that? So it's not a backdoor, it's not a CBDC in the sense that it's not the central bank issuing the digital currency, but that's actually not what people are worried about. When you look at financial surveillance in the United States and in other countries, by and large, it's not the central bank that is going out and doing the surveillance. It's not the central bank that is putting in the reporting requirements. That is a function reserved usually for the legislature, and it certainly is the case in the United States. So all of the stuff that people don't like in the United States about our existing system, which is already highly surveilled. You don't like the fact that there's, transaction reports on, suspicious activity reports that go to the Treasury Department on any transaction more than $10,000. You don't like the know your customer anti-money laundering laws. All of these forms you have to fill out when you open a bank account, when you open a crypto account, where they ask you all this information. You have to provide biometric information. Americans spend $61 billion a year complying with know your customer anti-money laundering laws, and it catches almost zero criminals. This has been demonstrated. There's all kinds of documentation on this. This was an extension of the Bank Secrecy Act from 1970. It has completely failed in what its stated mission was. And its stated mission at the time in 1970 was to combat organized crime, to combat the mafia. This was the original, idea behind this. And when you had a suspicious activity report of $10,000, well, that's like the equivalent of $80,000 today or $90,000 a day. So there weren't a lot of suspicious activity reports being generated. Well, this is how government works. The threshold number never changes, but based on inflation, now every average small business is subject to the suspicious activity reporting. So all of that reporting, and there are other things too. And I'll talk about this later. But John E. Sununu, who I'm running against here in New Hampshire for the United States Senate, he was involved with the Patriot Act and some other things, including voting on the bill to make national security letters possible, so they can come in and basically shut down your bank account, and they'll issue a national security letter, and you can't tell anybody about it, including a lawyer. And I've documented this, even before Genius and Clarity, talking about the surveillance, the tracking, even the programmability that we already have within our existing system. Well, all of that came from Congress. So understand that first. The central bank is an unnecessary, useless third party, but the surveillance and the censorship comes from Congress. And so what they did with the Genius Act was they said, if you were going to be a legitimate regulated stablecoin, you have to back your stablecoin by U.S. Treasuries. So in other words, you can't back it by gold. You can't back it by, other cryptocurrencies. You have to back it with U.S. Treasuries, which is a way for the U.S. government to sell more debt. They estimate $3 to $4 trillion of government debt will be sold to back these stablecoins. So this was one part of the Genius Act. But one of the new pieces in the Clarity Act bill, the Senate thing yesterday, is it gives the government the ability to force stablecoin issuers to seize, freeze, or burn your stablecoins. They can even force you to exchange one stablecoin for another. So if all of a sudden they decide, hey, this platform, we don't like USDC on Ethereum, we want to switch you now need to substitute your USDC for Tether, backed by the Trump network or whatever it happens to be. World Liberty Financial, let's say they come up with a blockchain that's going to be used for backing. I'm literally, this is what is in the new form of the Clarity Act. It's awful for stablecoins. So when I say backdoor, what does this mean? It means the government, the United States government, has complete control over stablecoins. They have the ability to seize, freeze, burn, or even exchange stablecoins. And it actually even gets worse from there. And so this is, so seize, freeze, or burn, and then reissue. The reissue thing is really fascinating. So under this, they could say, hey, you're using Tether, you're using USDC. All of a sudden, hey, we want to roll out a CBDC. Well, guess what? Under this legislation, they could seize your stable coins and then reissue them on a CBDC. It's in the statute, section 10906. And I encourage you all to look this up. Again, these people that are supporting this bill, they can't have read it. Right? There's just I don't know. You go through and you look at this thing, and I would be shocked to see that anyone in the Liberty community or the crypto community has actually read the bill and comes across supporting it. I haven't seen it yet. All I've seen are fake accounts and people who haven't read the bill and people who are buying this headline narrative that, if this passes, $3 trillion is going to come in and buy Bitcoin and, buy your bag and this is going to, moon and all of this other stuff. That's there are non-thinking, non-reading people that believe that. But I just can't see anyone reading the bill and coming away with this thing. Here's the other piece in this new revised language. They can hold your money for 6 months without a judge, without a warrant, and without a charge. This is one of the new additions. Section 10305, 180 days. Now, I mean, look, if you're used to crypto and you've dealt with whatever Coinbase or any kind of exchange, you're used to this kind of thing happening where your money gets frozen. This is common. This is now institutionalized. They don't even need to act like they have a reason for doing this. If they think it's suspicious, that's good enough. There's no bar, there's no burden that needs to be required, that needs to be met, no judge that needs to sign off. And on top of that, this actually extends to the exchanges themselves. The exchanges can freeze your money, and now they have immunity from being sued themselves. So if Coinbase decides, hey, I don't like this guy, they no longer have to prove to anyone or prove to you that they have a reason for seizing your funds. So it isn't even just that the government can do this. The actual exchanges can do this. And of course, these exchanges are now heavily regulated. So who do you think they're going to side with? This is why you see Brian Armstrong out there urging everybody to sign this legislation. By the way, if you would please like and share this. I have no idea what's going on. I've been extremely heavily shadow banned. Like I put out a post on this very topic yesterday that probably would have gotten 100,000 views normally, and it's like less than 1,000 views, and the number of shares is equal to the number of likes. Like there's something, even right now, our traffic is about 1/10 or 1/20 of what it should be. And I don't know what it is that I'm putting out. If you look at the content, I've been putting out a lot of content rating all of the countries on the basis of technocracy, where they stand with respect to digital IDs and surveillance. And I, put out a couple of those posts today. And, once you start talking about these topics, the algorithms don't like it. It's not because people aren't interested. People are interested in things like flock cameras and other things. But this stuff that we're talking about right here hits a nerve, because if people knew what the Clarity Act was about, no one would be celebrating it. And we're near the finish line. And this thing could be stopped. Like, I urge the crypto community to read this bill and stop promoting it. I'm going to talk about some of the other things that you've been fooled to believe are a part of this bill. No, this is not going to make DeFi a thing. This is not good, or does not enable privacy coins. It's not great for open source developers. I'll go through these other elements as well. This is something that I wrote about in an article, and I talked about on a previous podcast. There are 13 sections of this bill that call for studies, reports, and future rulemaking. So there's stuff in there that isn't explicitly defined today, but that it gives these agencies the power to decide in the future. That is something that you need to understand, and you need to understand the history of financial regulation in this country, and you need to understand that never works to our advantage. So if somebody's like, well, at least they did, at least we still have self-custody. Understand, one of the things in these 13 sections of the bill is to begin doing a report and an investigation into self-custody wallets. So people will buy the headline on this. Oh, these are clear rules, and yeah, we have self-custody. They've already opened up the door. They're already, as part of this future rulemaking thing, they're going to clamp down on self-custody, and people are walking right into it. So this is, as I said, Congress has already ordered a study on your self-hosted wallet. And what is the framing of that study? The framing of that is around money laundering. And I'm telling you right now, I mean, again, I would love to debate with somebody out there who can say with a straight face that an actual problem that we have is people laundering money, not governments laundering money. This is about control. This is going to be used to try to wreck self-custody wallet providers, because the self-custody wallet providers are going to be forced to comply with this. So, I mean, I will say this, moving forward, we need open source wallets that can't be compelled to this kind of regulatory burden, because then all of a sudden you're going to find your favorite wallet is going to be providing a backdoor or providing some compliance mechanism here about your holdings on things like privacy coins. Guaranteed that's coming. And they've already opened that up in this bill. So section 10307. And again, I may put out an article about it. I'm going to be putting out content in various formats about this topic because it's that important. But I mean, again, download the bill yourself, run it in your own AI, ask it questions. And then ask it hypotheticals and then dig deeper. Keep asking questions about the history of, well, what does this mean? Rulemaking. Don't just look at something and say, oh, well, this says, well, I'll get into this. Maybe not today, but when I talk about the lawsuit that I filed against the state of New Hampshire and how I drafted the legal documents, you can simulate these things. You can do research on, okay, what is the track record of Congress when it gives away this rulemaking power? When a bill gives rulemaking power to an agency, what generally happens? And that one of the beauties of AI is you can actually collect and analyze that information. And so I think there are going to be some decision tools here I can finally show people definitively why you shouldn't trust government based on what they've actually done. And most people are just in an absolute vacuum. And as I said, crypto people are the most ignorant, naive people I have ever seen with respect to running PACs and hiring lobbyists and drafting legislation. Anybody who signs up for this, I'm going to boycott anyone who's participating in this. Not that I was using Coinbase or any of these other things yesterday, but Kraken's on the list. Yeah, I'm out on all of it. Anybody participating in the drafting of this bill and pushing this bill is against human freedom because the bill is that bad. So look at these sections. There's one section whose whole job is to write the next bill. So this is the report on legislative recommendations, section 10504. Every legal exchange must build full Bank Secrecy Act surveillance on you. Now, remember what I said earlier. We spend $61 billion a year complying with this, and it doesn't catch criminals. It doesn't stop money laundering. In fact, there are countless examples of large banks that end up paying huge fines, multi-billion-dollar fines because they were involved with money laundering for drug cartels or whatever, but the bank secrecy laws didn't catch any of it. They were found out after the fact. The actual Bank Secrecy Acts didn't stop this activity. It was found after the fact. So the BSA itself is fundamentally worthless. But then if you're a large financial institution and you're involved with this, no one goes to jail. There are only civil penalties. And now it's gotten to the point where the big banks just bake this in as a cost of doing business. So I've got to pay this fine. All right, well, it's worth it for me to work with a cartel. So it's all theater if you think that these bank secrecy laws actually prevent crime. They're there to protect crime, and they're there to protect the criminals. They're there to protect the existing banks. It has nothing to do with your safety whatsoever. If we were going to do anything, if you asked me what we should be doing, we should be repealing the Bank Secrecy Act. We shouldn't be adding any of this legislation. We should be getting rid of the SEC. We should be removing these organizations. These organizations do not protect consumers. They protect incumbents. They don't stop criminal behavior. They codify it, and they give, institutions that look like they have, integrity, monopoly control over it. So that's what should be happening. So the fact that I've seen no argument in defense of the Bank Secrecy Act that it does anything to prevent criminal activity. And so now one of the cornerstones of this bill, and now what politicians are even saying, and they're trying to even say, well, this is going to be great for free markets that we have the Bank Secrecy Act. Yeah, that's what we need. Let's go from $61 billion a year to let's go to $150 billion a year in compliance costs, in forms, in biometric screening, and more middlemen. That'll stop crime. That'll open up free markets. It's objectively false. It's provably false that the Bank Secrecy Act has improved either safety and security or free markets. So the Clarity Act never says anything about Monero or Zano. It doesn't have to. I mean, this is all more ways of trying to squeeze privacy coins off of exchanges, because when you see all of the layers of all of the reporting that has to be done, again, these exchanges have to record all of these transactions, all of your transaction history. If you pull your money off of an exchange, that's tracked. They are closing off the gates everywhere and giving massive power to the regulatory bodies, as well as actually to the few exchanges and large crony players that are left. So Congress has already ordered a study of our privacy tools. So digital asset mixers, tumblers. This is section 10309. So again, the point on this is there's nothing here that provides like clarity into there isn't any clarity if you're in privacy, other than we know that they've ramped up the BSA. We know that they've ramped up the other reporting requirements, and then they have ordered study into these things into greater detail after this bill is passed. And I encourage you to look up again the history of, does that break towards individual freedom, or does that break towards more government control? And you will find that inevitably, all of the time, 100% of the time, this goes against individual freedom. So you already have BlackRock, JP Morgan, Franklin, Templeton, Cantor Fitzgerald. All of these organizations have been tokenizing anyway. They've been building these platforms. They've been working on it. But it's really the passage of the Clarity Act that gives them the ability to go full steam ahead. So what that means is it's not, oh, if they pass the Clarity Act, then there's some period of time where people have to actually build these platforms to be able to comply with the regulation. No, they've already built the platforms. This is how we will own nothing. Again, if you imagine all of your stocks all of a sudden become digital tokens, and those digital tokens have CBDC level surveillance, that is what we're talking about happening with the Clarity Act. So the Clarity Act is the platform that tokenization runs on next. Your house, your bond, your retirement fund. It is literally how you will own nothing. So if you're going to take away 2 points from this, it's the largest surveillance bill in U.S. history, and this is how you will own nothing. This is something that Klaus Schwab could not have envisioned a better construction for how people's assets can be stripped away from them and then given back to them as, as digital contracts that are under the control of the state and other third parties. So, they do have the thing in here for open source developers. So there's a test. So can you touch anyone's money? So if you're an open source developer, there's a carve out in here where it's, non-controlling means lacking the unilateral and independent ability to control, initiate, or effectuate a user's transactions. This is the bill zone text, section 10604. So if you write code, publish it, and walk away, you're protected. But if you hold an admin key, run an upgradable contract, take a fee, run the website, you arguably control, and the shield evaporates. So this is very, very narrow protection. And then when you see what happens, they've closed off. So you may write and publish code, but anybody that uses that code, they're still subject to all of these rules. So they basically closed off your ability to use these protocols. And by the way, for people like Roman Storm, all of this is kind of moving forward. So even the bill has a language that says, well, yeah, open source developers in the future won't be held liable, but it doesn't address or anything that's happened in the past. So this bill does not apply retroactively. So who decides what counts as control? By the way, this is a big one too. People will read something and say, oh, well, this says what the parameters are for, whether or not you control an asset or not. Well, it turns out that's not the case. The bill gives the prosecutor after the fact the ability to draw that line. This is where people get fooled all of the time. I mean, again, if you're new to crypto and you're new to politics and you're sitting there reading a bill and you're believing what it says, learn what the consequences are of bills. Learn what happens when something becomes a law, and then learn what happens when it goes from being a law to something where you're actually having to deal with law enforcement or deal with it in the courts. Those are two separate problems. And the amount of discretion that prosecutors have here is enormous. It's a complete loss, again, for freedom. The shield kills, it kills one legal weapon, but pure code publishing isn't money transmitting under Section 1960. So this is the exact charge used on Roman Storm and the Samurai developers, and that weapon retires, but only going forward. Again, I can't stress that enough. So this doesn't mean if this gets passed that these guys are going to be free. They've explicitly outlined that, 18 USC 1960. So the shield only starts the day this becomes law. Roman Storm was convicted before that day. The bill does not undo his conviction. Now, I don't know how this would apply to the fact that he's up for retrial. So maybe there's some solace there, but this is section number 10604. But by the way, every other weapon, so it may be lawful for you to be an open source developer who writes code, provided that you don't have a controlling interest as determined in the future by a prosecutor. So again, I encourage you to learn how courts work. But every other weapon stays loaded. So sanction laws can still target a smart contract itself, like the Tornado Cash fight. The Bank Secrecy Act for anything beyond pure publishing. The SEC and CFTC still maintain their fraud authority. So this is no big, great opening. There's really no way to look at this as being something that promotes freedom. So yeah, Roman Storm and the Samurai guys in the future wouldn't get punished. But if you look at anyone that uses their services like those in the future, should someone create them, they're bound by all of these regulatory constraints, including the BSA and everything else. So this was the strategy shift. This is how they're trying to fool everybody. They're not trying to arrest the author. Instead, they licensed every door to using the protocol. So the protocol is legal, but using it is not. And again, this is going to be really tough because people, once you get something this far into the process, people just want to get something done. And these lobbyists and lawyers some of these people get paid $2,000 an hour or whatever to work on this stuff. And so by the time you're this far into it, they're like, well, we just want to get something done. They want to protect their ego. They want to protect the fact that they put all this time into this, but it's a complete sunk cost because the bill is absolutely a disaster. So, so here's an example. So the website gets illicit finance duties. The exchange runs chain analytics and files a report on you. Treasury can cut off any flow it names. Mixers and self-hosted wallets get studied for the next bill. Legal protocols, licensed doors, reportable flows. That's why this is the biggest financial bill since the Patriot Act. And again, this is sections 10502, BSA, another section 10505, and then 10507 and 10509. Look it up. So they legalized writing the recipe and then licensed every kitchen. So you may build the printing press, but every newsstand needs a permit. Every reader shows an ID, and the Treasury can order any book pulled. That's not free software. That's free code in a controlled harbor. And the DOJ side is fighting to shrink even that before the floor vote. So again, I will tell you right now, this bill, as I've outlined it and as I've discussed it, it gets worse than that. This bill has already deteriorated from what was previously out there. And again, they have to get these 10 votes. And the 10 votes have to come from Democrats at the end of the day. So the appeal is now being explicitly made. And the propaganda is all around promoting the Bank Secrecy Act, promoting surveillance. They're actually trying to sell the thing that we don't want to get the actual 10 additional votes. It's an absolute disgrace. Cynthia Loomis is is a terrible person who is, monetizing this personally and knows nothing about it. I mean, she has zero understanding of how crypto and self-custody works. I've talked to her. You can listen to her, even what her story is about crypto. But she's out there. She will spin anything to try to get this done. And she's now spinning the BSA and she's spinning surveillance as a way to get this done. So, as a reminder, the income tax started at 1%. Only on the rich in 1913. 5 years later, 77% of workers paid it. Social Security numbers were never to be used for identification in 1936. Banks required them by the 1960s. Every exclusion gets walked back. When BlackRock finishes tokenizing the world, they'll remove crypto's exclusion the same way. The cage was already built. Again, why do you need BlackRock? If you have the ability to tokenize and trade assets peer-to-peer, what is the purpose of BlackRock? But yet, BlackRock and Cede and Company and Coinbase and all of these intermediaries, these people now support the bill. It's not a threat to them. They're capturing it through this bill. And it doesn't benefit you at all. Oh, and by the way, going back to, I said it's the biggest surveillance bill since the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act's special measures power, which was once aimed at the world's worst money launderers after 9/11, is now aimed at your digital assets. So this bill even touches the Patriot Act. I mean, I'll probably do I'll do a podcast on the Patriot Act at some point because it feeds into this Johnny Sununu thing, who voted for it and then voted for reauthorization of it after claiming he tried to make it better for civil liberties protection. But in essence, he was just lubed to make sure that it got reauthorized. This guy's voted for everything. Patriot Act, even though he's not in the Senate, he's come out in favor of the Genius Act, the Patriot Act. He voted for Real ID, voted for TARP. But yeah, no, the Patriot Act has these special measures powers. And now, as a result of the Clarity Act, if it passes, this will be aimed directly at your digital assets. So if you like the Patriot Act, you're going to love the Clarity Act. So if you want to look up what it is, it's 31 USC 5318A. The Patriot Act's Section 311. Treasury names a target a primary money laundering concern. No judge required, no trial, just a designation. This is the power that we're giving to the Treasury Department. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about the history of Larry Summers was the U.S. Treasury Secretary. The guy in the Epstein files who it was alleged was the heir apparent to Epstein. That guy was a U.S. Treasury Secretary. Look at the history of recent U.S. Treasury Secretaries. Why would you give anybody that power? I mean, you shouldn't want anyone to have that authority. But if you look at the rogues gallery of people that end up becoming U.S. Treasury Secretaries, this should be very concerning to everyone to give this power. So again, Section 10303 extends the same power under the Patriot Act to digital assets. The Treasury can just name a wallet, can name an exchange, can name a protocol, a money laundering concern, and then order banks and exchanges to surveil it, restrict it, or cut it off. We are giving complete control over digital assets to the worst people on the planet. And then there are people out there that have the nerve to say, oh, this is going to pump my bags. The story that people have sold themselves about this whole thing is, well, this regulatory clarity is going to make it so that now pension funds and 401ks can buy crypto. And so $3 trillion is going to come in and we're all going to be rich. That's the headline story that people get out of this. No one that's read the bill is talking about the benefit of that. You would be talking about the Patriot Act. You would talk about the ability for the government to seize, freeze, exchange stablecoins. You would be talking about 5 years of holding people's transaction histories, reconstructed transaction histories, and sharing that information with foreign central banks. You would talk about all of the regulatory requirements on on the actual exchanges and brokers themselves. Even more and more employees have to go through more and more training. It's just layer after layer after layer of surveillance within the exchanges and everything else. And then on top of that, this list of 13 different things that they're punting and doing research reports for a future bill, all of which, by the way, are focused not on, the paragraph doesn't say, oh, we want to make sure we protect people's individual rights. It doesn't say we want to make sure, like this should be another amendment to the Constitution, is that people have, absolute, self-custody, the absolute right to self-custody of their own assets, right? That's not what it says. The report is reviewing self-custody wallets from the perspective of money laundering. They're already telling you what the next bill is going to be. On top of this, which if this isn't bad enough for you, I can't help you. And the fact that the Patriot Act is being applied to digital assets under the Clarity Act also tells you what you need to know about how surveillance bills work over time. The Patriot Act was sold as a tool to fight terrorist financing in 2001. That was the scope. Now, 25 years later, it can be pointed at your personal crypto wallet or any protocol the Treasury decides to name without a court order. So this reveals two pieces of information that you need to know. One, it tells you how bad the Clarity Act is, and then it also tells you where the Patriot Act has evolved to. But I'm telling you, the Clarity Act is going to make the Patriot Act look like the Declaration of Independence. This bill is that bad. And remember, I said it first. Hopefully it doesn't pass, but whatever. Remember this. I've been saying this for a while. It's the single largest expansion to financial surveillance authority since the Patriot Act. So again, the Bank Secrecy Act costs $61 billion per year. Banks filed over 4 million suspicious activity reports in 2023. The GAO found less than 3% of currency transaction reports from 2014 to 2023 were ever accessed by law enforcement, and only 4% of suspicious activity reports get any follow-up. It's all just waste and surveillance, and it doesn't and government control, and it doesn't catch criminals. This is from a GAO report, December 2024. Wachovia laundered $378 billion for drug cartels. No one went to prison. HSBC laundered $881 million. A fine. Promotions, in fact. JP Morgan kept Jeffrey Epstein as a client for 5 years after his conviction. They got a settlement. Jerry Diamond, 0 jail time. Ian Freeman ran a $10 million peer-to-peer Bitcoin exchange. I mean, not even an exchange. He sold people Bitcoin peer-to-peer. He operated ATMs. 8 years in federal prison. This bill does not help Ian's situation. This bill doesn't provide protection for people like Ian. This is a complete coup. It is a complete takeover by Treasury, by the existing financial system, and by the handful of crypto firms that are going to be able to afford the lobbyists and the compliance costs to be a part of this surveillance regime. So, people cheering on the CEO of Coinbase. Are you kidding me? You think Brian Armstrong? Do you remember this? People are like, oh, Brian Armstrong went to Davos. Boy, we really have a seat at the table. He's becoming Davos, not the other way around. There isn't a single pro-liberty value Brian Armstrong has brought to this equation. All he's done is use the force of the state to carve out a moat for himself at all of our expense. So, I mean, I don't know. Probably if you're listening to this, you're probably not a fanboy or cheering this on, but I don't know what we have to do to wake people. I did as much as I could. I went to Brownstone. I've done podcasts on this, and there are some other people that get this, but I mean, this is, again, it's worse than the Patriot Act.
And most of your feed, if you're involved in crypto at all, are completely uninformed people promoting this as a way you're going to get rich. I was even on a podcast with a guy. He's got a big following, Paul something or other. And, I went on there and I explained months ago what I'm telling you now. I didn't have any points for it. He's continued to promote every day the Clarity Act. Oh, we've got to get this passed. I don't know who these people are, but I'm telling you that it's all fake. The traffic and engagement, and these people don't want to engage in a conversation about it. They don't want to talk about the surveillance aspect. So programmable money, programmable assets, a whitelist for who's allowed to hold either. This is how you will own nothing. That is the platform. That is the purpose of the Clarity Act. The Genius Act tightens control and adds surveillance to how you spend money. The Clarity Act adds surveillance and programmability to everything that you own. Two of the worst pieces of legislation, and the fact that they're being positioned as being pro-crypto is frankly criminal. So they promised you regulatory clarity, and they're delivering the surveillance state. Regulatory clarity means clear lines of fire. This bill is not law yet. The window to stop it closes, I don't know, maybe this week. Who knows if they're going to find any extra time. Maybe these wars or whatever, maybe some of these other absolute catastrophes that we have going on might slow the legislative calendar, and then this doesn't get done. This is, by the way, one of my 4 demands for dropping out of the race, is to kill the Clarity Act. So that's the bad news. I mean, the bad news is, if you were hoping that the government was going to actually do something to promote your freedom, that was probably the wrong premise to begin with. Government was never going to solve this problem. And the answer has always been the same, which is outside of the regulatory regime. And there is an exit. And I want to talk about a little bit about Zeno today and some exciting developments going on at Zeno. I'm going to go into this material in much greater detail as this launches. There are 2 big hard forks coming for Zeno. One of them in like 33 days and the other next year, but major upgrades to Zeno. And I'll talk about them at a high level now. And then as they roll out, I will, go into a real deep dive on this. But one adds control with every upgrade. The other adds privacy with every upgrade. So this is kind of what we're talking about when you're looking at, I look at Clarity. The reason that I like Zeno is I look at Zeno as being like basically the antithesis to the Clarity Act. And for a long time, I've been involved with tokenizing assets for now 7 years. And so the Clarity Act says we're going to tokenize all of your assets, and then we're going to give BlackRock and then the federal government and Cede and company and all of these other people control, and Congress control over those assets. They can come in and tell you, you know what, you can't use that stable coin anymore. That's frozen. You have to move to this chain. We're going to take your, retirement account, all of this other stuff. But Zeno is different. Every upgrade of the Zeno network adds more privacy and more scalability. If you're not already aware, which should be surprising if you're listening to this, I mean, Zeno is it's a privacy coin, but that also allows you to create tokens, privacy tokens. You can tokenize any other assets. You could tokenize stocks, homes. I mean, some of the applications of Zeno are Freedom Dollar, which is a privacy stable coin built on Zeno, but it's an algorithmic stable coin. So it's not one of these stable coins discussed in the Clarity Act or the Genius Act that are backed by U.S. Treasuries with all these backdoors and freezing and everything else. This is a private stable coin, but it's not backed by Treasuries. It's backed by over-collateralized Zeno, and there's no central agency. It can't be frozen, and the transactions can't even be tracked. This is the best tool I've seen as an alternative to the Genius Act with now the new Clarity extensions that go after stablecoins. I wouldn't use a stablecoin. I would not use Tether or USDC. If you go to freedomdollar.com, they have a running list of all of the seizures that have happened. I mean, to be clear, it's not, the Clarity Act wasn't necessary in order for these stablecoins to be frozen. That's been going on for a long time. This just adds a whole new level of ability for law enforcement to just come in and unilaterally act on this stuff. And it gives them control. Like I said, the thing that I found to be the most horrifying on this is that they can come in and seize your stablecoin and then give you a different stablecoin. So we don't like that you were using Tether or USDC. We're freezing that. Now you're using Project Hamilton, the CBDC pilot between MIT and the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. They could do that under this new Clarity Act. So not only could you use Zano as a payment method itself, and it's private, you can't see the transaction amounts, you can't see any of that information, but you can tokenize these other assets and trade them. And there's no third party that can be shut down, and you can't see these transaction history. So I just talked about the fact that what they're doing with the Clarity Act is the roadmap has a free switch, a clawback, a whitelist, and 13 studies telling you what comes next. And by the way, every future revision is going to be another lock. This only gets worse. And they'll come after self-custody wallets next. So, you know, if you want to compare the two, we're looking at the week of July the 27th is the window for the bill to close in the Senate for the Clarity Act. And Zano's next fork is, in contrast, the week of August the 25th, block 3,833,000. Once that block hits, then we switch over to this new fork of Zano. So both clocks are ticking. One is a complete surveillance system. The other is an upgrade to what I think is clearly the best, privacy and tokenization platform, and provides more accessibility. So here's what comes out of this next fork. Again, I'll do a dedicated podcast on this, probably bring some people from Zeno on to talk about this. But this next fork will create exchange-friendly addresses. And so this is critically important for people to be able to bridge Zeno to other blockchains like Ethereum and Solana and the Telegram coin, et cetera, that no custodian controls. So in essence, it's a harder to steal wallet and a harder to block network. And by the way, this will make it easier for exchanges to be able to offer Zeno as well, which is one of the challenges, because Zeno right now is it's a privacy coin, and exchanges don't like this. But these gateway addresses, as they're called, provide a way for people to purchase a form of Zeno that they can then convert to. But you can buy on an exchange and then convert to the full privacy by default version. The next idea, which is slated to be launched next year, is a hard fork called Zenith. And in essence, Zeno is moving to complete proof of stake. Right now, Zeno is hybrid proof of work, proof of stake, but it's moving to complete proof of stake with this Zenith hard fork. And the benefits to this, I'm not going to go into all the technical details on this because we've already way deep into the other stuff. But in essence, it's going to shorten the time to confirm transactions to 60 to 90 seconds. There are some really fascinating things, and I've talked about this before. With proof of stake, you can stake your coins that you have and actually earn rewards for securing the network. But you have to understand it's different the way that Zeno does it, because a lot of people are familiar with the way Ethereum does proof of stake, or in many other blockchains, which is, first, in order to be able to stake, you have to hold a massive amount, or a certain, threshold amount to even be able to stake. And this creates kind of like a I mean, it's actually kind of like how the central banking system works. It's an exclusive number of people that can even participate in securing the network. And there are problems with that. One, with Ethereum, you can actually see who is staking. So there's all of the privacy concerns that you can imagine, but also the ability for bad actors or government actors to potentially influence those large stakers. The way Zano works is there's no minimum. Anyone can stake. And because of the way that it's constructed, you can't see who's staking what. It's actually private. It's private staking. So this is a significant improvement in terms of the way proof of stake works. And my understanding, I think one of the main devs behind this is going to be giving a talk on this soon. So I'll replay that if you want to get into all of the technical details. But the net effect of this is that the network is going to be more secure, and the transaction times are going to get even shorter in terms of how long it takes to finally confirm a transaction on the blockchain. So in short, the two big summaries here: this first hard fork that's coming up in 33 days is going to make it easier for Zano to get onto exchanges and easier to do exchanges between various blockchains. And then this Zenith upgrade is going to improve the speed and the security of the network. So I'm giving you that as a roadmap just because I want to start mapping this out and comparing what is going on with the state, what's going on with the US government, and we can talk about what other countries are doing as well in terms of how they're regulating digital assets. And it's important for you to understand the kind of the roadmap ahead for what the alternative is. It isn't all despair. I mean, again, I have been very adamant about how bad the Clarity Act is from the very beginning. There was never any intent for this to be something that makes it, easier for open source developers or is, beneficial for DeFi or for self-custody. All of the sound bites that they gave you when they were selling you this early on, none of it is coming to fruition. They're just adding a massive surveillance system, throwing in the Patriot Act, and then punting everything else to these reports, which are all biased towards adding more regulation in the future. And research this. There is no financial regulation that gets repealed. These financial regulations only go one way. So you have to look for alternatives. And fortunately, and the reason I'm passionate about Zano is Zano understands the importance of the tokenization of assets and understands that it's the night and day difference. A lot of people, because they don't understand the technology at all, they lump it into one category. So there are a lot of people that I know that are intelligent people that they just assume that all blockchain technology is surveillance technology, or it's all technocratic in nature, and that's not true. There are, technology it's the same with AI, it's the same with everything. These things can either be technocratic control systems, or they can be a liberating way out that allows you to engage in voluntary private exchange. And so it's very important to understand the nuance, and more important, this is where I end up, supporting Zano and continuing to work on that. So a lot of big developments coming out there. So when transactions are invisible, they can't be blocked, reversed, or selectively enforced. So again, this is all outside of the regulatory regime. This is not a centralized agency. This is an open source protocol. And, you can't block what you can't see. You can't freeze what you can't see. This is why this is critical. And to that end, people should be horrified about what's going on right now on the stablecoin front. I just learned about this in the last 24 hours. You can go to freedomdollar.com, and there's now an ability for you to basically swap your Tether for Freedom Dollar. And then if you need to, swap back out of Freedom Dollar into Tether, but getting a different address. So that is a huge development. And I would encourage people, if you are interested in privacy and sovereignty and having control over your own money, and you're sitting on stable coins, seriously consider looking into Freedom Dollar. I won't touch these transparent stablecoins because they were already tracked and seized. And by the way, whether they're even backed by anything or not, the ability of these stablecoins to pass audits and everything else. I mean, there's a lot of inherent risk with this. So I would say in light of the new clarity provisions on stablecoins, I would look into Freedom Dollar immediately. So I'm not a maximalist. I like the privacy space in general, although there are some nuances. I have some issues with Zcash and a lot of questions around that. So I'm obviously not all privacy coins are equal, but I certainly like and use Monero as well. But for people that ask the question, oh, well, the assumption is because Monero is the largest, privacy coin that what does Zeno offer? Is it just a knockoff? And the truth is that the lead developer and creator of Zeno developed the technology, crypto note technology behind Monero. This guy is an absolute OG. And the biggest point of differentiation is Monero is great as a payment mechanism. It's a great privacy coin to use for payments, but Zeno allows you to tokenize other assets. So going back to the original thing that I was stating, money represents 5% of global assets. It's everything else that makes up the other 95%. So Zeno taps into that and allows you to tokenize those assets and trade them privately. So, they're both great to use, but understand the application for Zeno is really as a counter to the threat, the authoritarian threat of the Clarity Act and what it's going to do for tokenizing everything that you own. So just to recap on these hard forks coming up with Zeno, one of them is already coded. So this new fork that's going to happen in 33 days, the coding's already done. It goes live. And so look forward to that and the access that opens up in terms of exchanges and the ability to participate in some other things. I know about some other things. I'm not sure if I could talk about them now, but there are going to be some fairly quick announcements that come up after the hard fork in August in terms of partnerships and things that you'll be able to immediately do with Zeno and with Freedom Dollar. So stay tuned for that. And the other is Zenith, which it's not expected till 2027, but it's a big deal, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it soon. But as soon as it goes live, I'll do a podcast and maybe bring some of the Zeno guys in to talk about this first hard fork. So I'm going to switch a little bit to the election now, and it is related to all of this. And just to give you a recap, if you're not familiar with the situation, I'm running for U.S. Senate as an independent in New Hampshire. And the reason for this is not because I can go in and fix the political system, or if I'm elected, I'm going to be able to solve things in Washington, D.C. If I'm elected, then the best thing that I could do would be to expose and obstruct. I do not. The federal government is the problem, and I think the best model that we have for anyone working within the system is Thomas Massie, in terms of what he did to expose Epstein and expose some of the things that's going on. And of course, he lost his re-election as a result of that, and was heavily targeted for that. But my viewpoint is this: there are a lot of people that think that the way to liberty is within the Republican Party. And there comes a point where it's like, if you actually believe that, and I know a lot of people that got into politics because of the Ron Paul revolution, but let's look at the results. 17 years ago, Ron Paul wrote a book called End the Fed. The Fed has only grown in power. 66% of the dollars ever printed were printed after Ron Paul wrote that book. There's been no audit of the Fed, any movement to end the Fed. It's dead. There's zero going on there politically. And it just turns out that people that are the parasite class that get elected to power are not going to give up their primary leverage point, which is the creation of money. So the idea that we're going to elect people, but at its peak, there were three kind of pro-liberty people in Congress: Thomas Massie, Justin Amash, and Rand Paul. And now today, only one of those still is there. So there are a lot of people thinking, oh, we just had more people like Thomas Massie. I've got news for you. You're not going to have more people like Thomas Massie. And the Republican Party is the one, the party apparatus, Trump specifically targeted Massey and then brought in Miriam Adelson, and they brought in like $35 million of money tied to AIPAC in foreign countries. The Republican Party did this to their own person in a primary. So my reason for running is this. It's to hold the Republican Party accountable one of two ways, either before the election or after the election. And I've listed 4 demands. And the idea is this, if the demands are met, then I won't be on the ballot. I won't submit the signatures that I've gotten on September the 2nd. And I won't be a threat in the race. The reason that I'm a threat in the race is I've already done this before. I ran in 2016 and I cost the sitting U.S. Senator Kelly Ayotte her seat. I got almost 18,000 votes. She lost by 1,000 votes. There was even a libertarian in there. And it's been well documented that, my race was the reason that she lost. And that was my stated reason for running at the time. And people were very aware of this. People voted for me because they didn't like Kelly Ayotte's position on wars. They didn't like her association with John McCain and Lindsey Graham and all of these other people. And more importantly, they didn't like the fact that she was interfering with state elections, including the speakers of the House race. So I've proven definitively that this can work. And that was the most expensive U.S. Senate race per capita in the history of the country. And it cost me almost nothing to do. And I'm doing it again. And now the stakes are even higher. The Republicans are going to lose the House. But if you look at the prediction markets, it's about a 50-50 toss-up as to who is going to control the U.S. Senate. And it turns out New Hampshire is one of the toss-up races. And the person that the Republicans are putting up is one of these, members of a political dynasty family, Johnny Sununu, whose father was the chief of staff for George H.W. Bush, who was himself a U.S. Senator a while back before losing re-election in 2008. And he is the ultimate technocrat. He's exactly what I talk about as being the problem. The threat here is not Republicans versus Democrats or U.S. versus China. It's the encroachment of technocracy. It's digital IDs. It's CBDCs. It's the Clarity Act. It's Palantir. That is a threat to free will itself. That is the complete surveillance state where what decisions you can make about your life are predetermined from the top down by technocratic entities, not even necessarily nation states, because the technocracy, the companies, Oracle, Palantir, et cetera, these are global multinational corporations. And they're essentially manipulating governments around the world at the federal, state, and local level to push their agenda. And at the end of it is essentially a digital prison. So in any event, I filed to run. I signed what's called a declaration of intent. And the state is trying to keep me off. They're not even now, just by signing up to run doesn't mean I'm on the ballot. I actually have to collect 3,000 signatures to get on the ballot, confirmed signatures of registered voters. I won't go into the details about the whole process. So just signing up doesn't mean I'm on the ballot, but the New Hampshire Secretary of State twice rejected my filing, my declaration of intent that I signed, claiming that I didn't meet the qualifications because I wasn't a registered voter where I was domiciled. Well, it turns out that's actually not a requirement. The Constitution states what the requirements are to run for the United States Senate. You have to be 30 years old. You have to be a citizen for 9 years, and you have to be an inhabitant of the state that you are in at the time of the election. Being a registered, which, by the way, the Secretary of State's own website stated that. It lists all of these other positions. If I were running for governor, if I were running for state senate, if I were running for state representative, I would have to be a registered voter. That's on the qualifications page, but it's not listed for the United States Senate. Why? Because this has been upheld by the Supreme Court in many cases across the country. There's much case law on this. You do not, adding the requirement to be a registered voter changes the qualification. A state can determine the time, manner, and place of an election, but it can't determine the eligibility of a candidate. And adding being a registered voter does just that. Now, I will say I did, in fact, also register to vote within the filing period and everything else. And so I actually think I've won this on 3 different ways. But the important thing for you to understand is that they're trying to keep me off of the ability to even be on the ballot should I collect the signatures. And the reason for this is because of what happened in 2016. And the reason for this, I actually appealed to the Ballot Law Commission, and one of their main reasons for denying me my appeal is that I'm extremely knowledgeable about voting and essentially should have known better. Which, I mean, the irony of that is I do know better. I was familiar with the Constitution. I was familiar with what the Secretary of State's website said, and even what the form itself said that I signed. So, which is why I have sued this Secretary of State in federal court and got an expedited hearing. I was stunned, by the way, the speed of this. As you know, I talk about political prisoners often, and I've been to federal court hearings and have had lawyers on and everything else. And so I'm familiar with federal court procedure as well. And usually this stuff goes on for years and years. But because it's an election issue, literally within 48 hours, the court responded to me. Within a week, we had a hearing on a preliminary injunction. And a preliminary injunction is if I win, what that means is, the judge is sufficiently convinced that I'm going to win. They're basically going to speed up the judgment. In this case, what I've asked for is for the Secretary of State to accept my paperwork as filed. And they've taken it very seriously. It accelerated the timeframes. And I expect to hear on this, within a week. And it was a magistrate that is looking at it first, and she's going to make her recommendation to the judge. And so, there are like 3 or 4 layers to this. I mean, I could appeal this all the way to the Supreme Court if I needed to. I don't think that I'll have to, but we have a very good shot at winning. I mean, I think we, by the Constitution and all of the case law precedent and everything else, I think that we're very likely to prevail in court. But I want you to understand, they want me off of this in a big way. And because this strategy, understand that this strategy isn't just about what these 4 demands are. And the 4 demands are, pardon the crypto prisoners. And I've listed the crypto prisoners on the website, and I've talked about them. Interviewed some of them, interviewed their lawyers, spouses. I've gotten to know most of them personally, or already knew them, and have talked about them here. But the reason that is one of the demands, and the reason for all of the demands, is it's about holding the party accountable. I'm not asking them to do anything other than honor what their commitments were, honor what they said they were going to do. That's why I ran in 2016, and that's why I'm doing it now. And it's very dangerous if this works. I mean, actually, if it works again, it's very likely to work because it's already worked. But more people find out about it, what it means is you don't have to just say, oh, I'm voting for the Republicans or I'm voting for the Democrats and we only have a 2-party system. This means you can actually hold them accountable. And I don't know about you, but I'm sitting here looking at this Republican Party, and they said we're going to end the war on crypto, and yet they have not released these crypto prisoners. And in fact, they're retrying Roman Storm. They've added people like Ray Youssef. It's expanded. The war on crypto is not over. It's expanded. In fact, the biggest aspect of the war on crypto, even above and beyond not releasing these crypto prisoners, is the Genius Act and the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is the war on crypto. It is a complete authoritarian takeover of digital assets, everything that you own. So free the crypto prisoners, kill the Clarity Act. Those 2 would be Trump honoring what he said about ending the war on crypto. The third is fire Howard Lutnick. And the reason that I have Howard Lutnick on there is it's related to the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, because his family is personally benefiting from the Genius and Clarity Acts by negotiating a deal to be the ones that manage all of the treasuries that back Tether. I've talked about that a lot in the past. But he also was involved with writing the tariff bill, Trump's tariff bill, which was rejected by the Supreme Court, which he seemed to have advanced knowledge of, and his family's firm bet that it would be overturned by the Supreme Court, and made a massive amount of money on this. But he's there because he represents, if one of Trump's main things is he's running to drain the swamp, Howard Lutnick is the swamp. He's the swamp based on Tether. He's a swamp based on tariffs. He's the swamp based on, look, if you use AI and you use Anthropic. You use Claude, Mythos, or Fable. You may recall a few weeks back that all of a sudden one day you might have been using those models and it was shut off. Well, it was shut off at the direction of Howard Lutnick under his power as Commerce Secretary under export controls. But I mean, this is not even an export because it's people within the United States or U.S. citizens who couldn't use it. And then they nerfed the technology. They completely, I use Claude. I've been switching over to other models, but I mean, they lobotomized Claude Fable. They took 20 IQ points off from the time it was released to then Lutnick getting involved. And then his association with Epstein. Not only is his neighbor, but visiting the island and everything else, and there are a lot more ties there. And then he lied about it through his confirmation process, and the list goes on and on and on. So he's there because, he is the swamp that Trump claims to be draining, but then he's also tied in on the war on crypto because of his involvement and influence in pushing the Clarity Act and the Genius Act and then profiting it off of it. And the last is end the draft. And I put that on there just simply because I know many people who voted for Trump solely because he made the statement, no new wars in the Middle East. And we went from that to listening to Pete Hegseth talk about bringing back the draft. It's absurd that we would even be talking about the draft, given that his original posture was, I'm going to have the Ukraine-Russia conflict resolved on day one and no new wars in the Middle East. So those are my four demands. And so it's basically holding the party accountable one of two ways. Either they meet the demands and then I'm not running, or they don't meet the demands and I run and they lose control of the United States Senate. Either way, there has to be a mechanism to hold the party accountable. And I know a lot of weak people that have resigned themselves to the fact of, it's only a two-party system. You have to work within the two-party system. It's like, how are you enjoying your job as a politician, accepting that the federal government is going to have complete control and is going to implement more surveillance and is going to protect pedophiles and then engage in wars after saying they weren't? I mean, at some point, you have to have some bar, and there are mechanisms for dealing with this. And I've already shown in 2016, you can use a third party to do this. But imagine if it worked again. This is why there's a lot of resistance to this idea. What if we actually organized and did this on a massive scale at both the federal level, the state level, and the local level, using a third party? I'm not saying a third party is likely to win based on the way that the system is structured. Yeah, but if you have a 50-50 split country, if you are strategic about how you run third-party races, you can go in and I affected the outcome of a $131 million race without spending $5,000. You can't work within the system. You can't work within the machine. And they love the fact that we're divided 50-50. They're sitting there creating these manufactured conflicts where it's like, your team red, your team blue. Either way, Palantir wins. Either way, John McCain wins. Either way, the military-industrial complex wins. This is a way to short-circuit this. So this has much bigger reach than just this election. So either way, but I'm doing everything that I can. So I did everything that I could within the state, according to the statute, according to the Constitution. And I'm not going to go through all the details. I'll do a whole thing, if I win or if I lose. Once there's a resolution to this case, I will show you exactly how I did all of the legal documents. I actually had an AI do an analysis of all of the information that I put together, and it assessed that the legal documents I put out would have cost somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 for all of the appeals, emergency temporary restraining orders, and everything else. Like, it has been a fascinating concept. And I will say this moving forward to the idea that one, you can use a third party to hold the other two parties accountable. But the other is, I think there's real potential here to use AI to empower individuals to sue or defend themselves pro se. One of the biggest scams, I mean, if you think the political system is bad, wait until you deal with the courts. I've had all of these crypto prisoners on, and you end up learning things like, the prosecution wins 98% of the cases that they bring in federal court. And the reason for that isn't because the other side is guilty. The reason for that is because the deck is completely and totally stacked. You can't win, and it costs, for instance, in the Southern District of New York, $13 million just to defend yourself. And then they have complete control over the rules, and they're able to, manipulate the evidence that's shown in court. And then when you go into front of a jury of your peers, particularly if it's something like crypto, well, if they see the state comes in and it's like they've got, their suits come in and they're alleged experts, and you have an audience that doesn't actually know anything about crypto, and then you've got some cypherpunk guy over here, defended by a lawyer, the deck is automatically stacked against you. But I'll tell you, whether you're fighting, AI data centers or flock cameras or fighting the state itself, there's a way to use AI. And by the way, I will do a full breakdown of this. It's not, hey, ChatGPT, write me this lawsuit. Like you have to go through. I'll share the whole process. I ended up running simulations based on who the actual magistrate was and who all the other side is, and running through, how is the hearing likely to go based on inputting all of the information about the actual cases, the actual case law. I mean, I spent well over 100 hours working on this, and we'll see if it works, but I actually think it's probably going to work. And if it does, if you can defeat the state, because I'm going up against the AG, I'm suing the state, and it's the assistant attorney general that I'm up against in court. I mean, I'll show you. I have behind me, I fell down, but a binder. I'll show you the binder and all the materials that I had going into court. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I had, and I wasn't exactly a great orator because I'm having to flip through these tabs to make sure, I'm getting the information right. But I had all of the case information available to me. And so I was able to pull up references to cases that, the other side was not familiar with. I actually trained myself. I created some songs that had mnemonics in them so that I could remember some of the key points. I actually created like a video game or a trivia game to quiz me on the case law and everything else. Like it has been a full-time undertaking. And again, I hope it wins for a whole variety of reasons, not the least of which it is constitutionally the right thing to do, and it will further my candidacy, but it's also another tool we can bring to the fight against technocracy. So the other thing that I'll say is, so on the signature front, we've collected, actually this number is out of date. It's more like 3,800 signatures so far. So we need 3,000 signatures, 1,500 in each congressional district. And we've collected more than that, and we're going to continue to collect more because some of them get thrown out. You have to go to each town and have each, supervisors of the elections or whatever, go through and look to see all the people that signed the petition. Are they registered voters? And some people leave out information, or they're not registered voters or whatever. So some of these get thrown out, but we will meet the deadline. And I've successfully done this before, and this was actually a much better process. And I want to thank all of our volunteers who have gone throughout the state to get these signatures. It's a big undertaking. You may think if you're in a big state, who cares, 3,000 signatures? But I mean, New Hampshire is really spread out. This is not a densely populated area. So you don't have big events where like 50,000 people are just congregating. So actually getting these 3,000 signatures is a real deal. So, in short, I argued my case on July the 15th, so a little over a week ago. We're expecting a ruling, and then the absolute deadline for all of this to have the signatures and to get the preliminary injunction through whichever court that is, whether it's this court or appeal or whatever, is September the 2nd. So we really have between now and September the 2nd to negotiate these 4 demands. So again, free these crypto prisoners, kill the Clarity Act, fire Lutnick, and the draft. These are things that the administration could do to follow through with what they said they were going to do. And if not, there's a real high probability that this race will cost them the U.S. Senate, because it did last time. In 2016, Ayotte lost, and then while it didn't change the balance right away from 2020 to 2022, it ended up actually, that seat ended up, kind of determining which party controlled the U.S. Senate. So this is a powerful tool, and a lot of people that are happy about the status quo And a lot of these mealy mouth people that have gotten into politics, and now that they've gotten power, they've abandoned their principles. They're all up in arms about it. You know, they'll start saying things like, well, this just isn't how things done. This isn't how it works. It's like, this isn't how it works. We're adding this. We're like one step away from a complete digital prison. We have $40 trillion worth of debt. I don't want to be lectured by people who are part of the problem about how it works. It doesn't work. So, you know, we need to use some alternative techniques like this. But by the way, there's no harm in the person that I'm running against, because he's literally worse than the Democrat when it comes to the biggest issue that matters, which is technocracy and fighting our digital enslavement. He voted for all of it. I mean, Patriot Act, TARP, Real ID, and then supported the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, and then bailed out the banks, and then became the chair of the self-proclaimed chair of a World Economic Forum finance board. I mean, he's worse than the Democrat in the fact that the Democrat, who's also awful, isn't able to wield that much power. So this guy has been destructive. You know, he did one of these things where he was against TARP, and then he ended up being for it and then was on an oversight committee for it. He's the guy that like comes in and makes it look, he does the little head fake. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to come in and put in these civil libertarian safeguards into the Patriot Act so that it can get reauthorized. Well, if you didn't put those in, it wouldn't have gotten reauthorized. So in the end, you were actually part of the problem. You're the face that they put in there to look reasonable, and you're the one that actually pushes the tyranny over the edge. This is why he's the kind of guy that would vote for, if he were a Dem, he'd be the kind of guy that would go across the aisle and make it look like he's reasonable to pass the Clarity Act. That's why this guy is more dangerous. So anybody that has the idea of, oh, well, gee, he's a Republican, he's better than a Democrat. I mean, at some point, you have to have some standards, or otherwise you're finding yourself rooting for the red team and completely fine with, you know, supporting pedophiles and genocide and murdering children and implementing a digital control grid. And, you know, if you want to do that just so that you can belong to a club, you should probably you should investigate your life choices. So, you know, I'm not running to join the institution. I'm running to expose it. And, you know, again, that's the whole point behind this. So again, at the end of the day, you know, I've covered a lot of ground here, but understand the Clarity Act is the biggest surveillance bill in U.S. history. It hasn't passed yet, but it's getting worse with every subsequent draft. There are a lot of uninformed people, and there are a lot of people who are paid to push propaganda that are claiming that this is going to usher in a golden age, and the only thing it's going to usher in are golden handcuffs. There's no freedom aspect to this bill. It's not going to save DeFi. It's not going to make DeFi a thing. It's not going to enable privacy coins. It's going to, you know, shut off the gates. You can still use privacy coins, which, by the way, you never needed to ask permission, which is the whole point. But it's going to enhance the Patriot Act. It's going to track everything that you do, everything that you buy, and give the ability for how you pay and everything you own to be seized by the government. The solution to that are things like Zano and Freedom Dollar and privacy coins and the private tokenization of assets and trading of those assets without third parties. So there's a silver lining. And lastly, you know, I don't believe that there are political solutions, but I do believe you can use the political system against itself to stop the spread of technocracy and to help liberate people who are actually promoting human freedom and economic freedom around the world. So we can build parallel systems, but at the same time, I guess the revelation I've had over the last several months is you can't ignore the political process, which isn't to say the political process is the only way you can get things done, but you need to kind of use the political process against itself to buy more time to build parallel systems. By the way, the beauty of this is I can run for office and I can say all these things. I have 300 hours of podcast content. That's my own podcast. And I probably have that much again on other podcasts that I've been on that have reached, 10, 15 million people. over the last 3.5 years. So, you know what I'm not worried about? I'm not worried about people using this against me, because the last thing anybody wants is my message getting out there. The whole strategy has to be to ignore me, because if more people learned about what I've been trying to say for the last 3.5 years, we might wake more people up to the fact that the entire political process is a joke. So I stand by everything that I've said. I'm not going to mince any of my words ever. And I don't need to, because I'm running to determine the outcome of a race. I don't need to get 50% plus one vote. So I can actually tell the exact truth, and it will resonate. Because I will tell you, in this race alone, I'm in New Hampshire. Yeah, there's some pro-liberty people that, buy into this. They actually have deluded themselves that, you can somehow be free, but just ignore the increasing controlling factor of Washington, D.C. on the state. I don't care about those people. By the way, I'm not going to ask for any politicians to endorse me either. Who gives a shit about what another politician says? I don't know anybody who's looking to their local rep to tell them who to vote for the United States Senate. So I'm not going to ask for, accept, or promote any endorsement from a politician. But this is the stakes here are pretty high, and there are some interesting things going on here. And I look forward to how this story unfolds and sharing this information with people. So in any event, this is, again, a lot of material, but please share this content. And I'm going to put out, obviously this is a longer form version of it. I will be putting out a lot of short clips. I will put out, and I will, I will pull this up now. I'm actually, I'm stunned by how shadow banned this content is. Like literally we're at about 1/10 of where we normally are. And I've seen this with my posts. So please share this or share the clips. But I want you to see, before I go here, to go to day2026.com. And I'm going to share that tab. And again, note the shadow banning. Like this is actually impressive. So as we're getting closer to an election, look, a lot of people don't like this. You know who doesn't like my message? Peter Thiel doesn't like my message. Elon Musk doesn't like my message. These are the technocrats ultimately that I'm talking about. The politicians are expendable. The actual people that are pushing the technocratic agenda are the people that own these big tech platforms. But in any event, you go to day2026.com, you can see the, latest, I'm going to be using AI, doing a lot of music videos and everything else, but go to the bills section, and this is where you can really drill in and see what's going on with these bills. And read them yourselves, use AI to review the actual text, ask it questions, become familiar with it, ask scenarios of it. But I will give you, there's a link to the bill on the webpage, but here's the score. And it tells you, where people are on these bills. It tells you who the sponsors were, but then it tells you the actual threat. So Clarity Act expands surveillance. It greatly expands financial control, identity requirements, centralizes power, due process erosion, corporate state fusion, enhances emergency powers, especially with the Patriot Act. So this gives you kind of the headline of this. Then it gives you what the key threats are, which we already talked about, a lot of these. And then, kind of try to decode the propaganda. And then it tells you who profits. So I think this is very important. I mean, most of these senators don't read the bill, and they don't write them either, by the way. So one of the things that's always interesting to ask yourself is who's writing these bills. And so we've analyzed here and show and break down, who profits from the bill, but we go into the lobbying as well. So we show how much has been spent on lobbying, and then who the lobbying firms are and who the PACs are. I think this is critical for people to understand, not only who's probably drafting the bill, but then who's funding all of the propaganda, all of the PR, all of the work behind the hearings. And what's interesting as you dig into this is, we're list who the specific people are, not just the firms, but it's like, okay, here's the person at the Blockchain Association. Here's the person, Jay Clayton, former SEC chair. How does the revolving door work? Who are the people that were previously regulators that are getting paid massive amounts of money to push this bill? What are the media conflicts of interest? This is one of the things that you'll find with these bills is you'll see these social media posts that come out from these crypto publications. You're like, well, wow, the crypto media likes it. And then you break down who their ownership is, and you find out the people that own the publications actually own other crypto firms that benefit from the legislation, which is why no one, one of these publications wrote 35 articles in favor of the Genius Act without ever having any that were anti, and no articles that were actually talking about the surveillance implications. I also break down other interesting things like the AstroTurf and bot activity involved with this, because this frustrated me. I would see these posts and people like, why does this post that there are 1,000 people that liked this article about the Clarity Act? Well, it turns out it's all fake. The traffic is fake. And there's a surge in posts supporting the legislation around the markup dates. Then there are all of these new accounts that have been found, and quite a bit of research that goes into the bot activity supporting this. So if you're seeing this and you're being persuaded, and you're not reading the article, and you're reading the headline, and then you're looking at the social proof behind the article, understand it's all fake. Try to find somebody. Listen, if you're listening to this, find somebody who wants to debate me about how this bill isn't the biggest surveillance bill in the history of the United States. Try to find somebody. Look, I've done a lot of podcasts and I had a lot of adversarial conversation. Find somebody. You won't. And I'll even comment on the lobbyist firms' posts themselves. They never respond. So I want you to keep that all in mind. So with that said, I'm not going to do Q&A tonight. I've got a lot of stuff going on, and whatever. The Clarity Act thing was just kind of I've been waiting for the bill language to drop, and it didn't disappoint. It was exactly what I told you it was going to be. It was more surveillance, more centralized power, more head fake and bluffing around DeFi and privacy, and more punting, but giving more authority and more reports to add future legislation and regulation after this bill is passed. This bill is a disaster. And if, I've talked to some people and they've had other people say it's a great bill. Good. Point them to me. Ask them these questions. Point them to this website. Point them to this article. Because if you're like, oh, this sounds a little extreme, find somebody to refute any of what I've said. I dare you to find somebody to refute anything that I've said. Would love to see it. What you're going to find is it's all fake. So with that, I'm going to, let's see, what song should I play on the way out? A lot of other stuff coming. There's actually, we've got 7 other websites. We've got the Daylight Phone. There's so much other stuff going on. I'm going to be doing a Enemies of the State podcast. I'm going to be hosting episodes from that. There's a lot of other things going on. And frankly, this is just an overwhelming amount of information between the Clarity Act and the Zano hard forks, which are, again, a good counter to that I wanted to get that out here now on kind of an emergency basis. But there's so much more information, so much more coming on Technocracy Atlas, so much more coming on flock cameras, a relaunch of Daylight with tools to help you improve your individual sovereignty. It goes on and on and on. I mean, I could have, this podcast go every day. And I will say, by the way, you can go to theaarondayshow.com, and we now have a 24/7 station that replays past podcasts, integrates music videos and everything else. And as this expands moving forward, I'm going to really build a community around this, but the community is going to be centered around people taking action and sharing information about steps they've taken to exit the system and to reclaim their personal sovereignty. But I'm going to build this around Now at this point, just a phenomenal amount of content that has been created, but then I'm going to be creating more content through the 7 different sites that we have. So stay tuned for that. I'm excited about that. I don't know when I'm actually going to formally launch it. It's built, but this is one of those things I'm probably not going to, it's probably going to be a month or so, depending on particularly how the election and all this other stuff works before I'm really pushing that out there. So I think I'm going to end this with the Hellfire Hurricane, which is one of several songs that I've done specifically around the crypto prisoners, the 7 main crypto prisoners that I've been advocating for, and I encourage you to do the same, to go to their websites, support them, sign the petitions if they need it. Like in the case of Roman Storm, if you can help financially with his legal fees, he's looking at now potentially 45 years in prison. But I'm going to end it on that song. So have a great night. We'll be back next Thursday at 6 p.m.
Through the door, federal boots on a keen front porch, money transmitter laws and the bank's Secrecy Act wrote the privacy down and the cage shut the fact. Code is free speech. Code is free speech. Walk them all home. Walk them all home. You said the war was over. Pardon them all. Pardon them all. Pardon them all. Embassy in Keene, 8 years for digital cash. Free them all. Roger fought from Spain, 50 million and a gag order. Sterling Golf stood on the map, 12 and a half on a black box. Roman Storm wrote the contract, retrial, 40 years on the table. Keown built the wallet Christmas Eve, Morgantown. William wrote privacy at 67, 4 years from Lisbon. Ray banked the unbanked, schools in his name, deported. Patel said code is free speech at the podium, but the 7 still wake up in cages and the war or lose Congress. Hey! Code is free speech. Code is free speech. Walk them all home. Walk them all home. You said the war was over. Pardon them all. Pardon them all. Pardon them all. Patel and Blanche gave a speech, no signature. Free them all. Free them all. Senate 52-49. Free them all. Free them all. The House about to flip. Free them all. Free them all. You pardon Ross. Now free the 7. America won't lead the world in crypto if it cages its innovators.